Now, quickly here around the league before my back gives out here and I'm on the floor stretching again. we did have one bit of news here I thought was pretty interesting. Let's kick it to Columbia, Missouri, where Eli Drinkwitz, going into his third season as the Tigers head coach, he's going to have his third defensive coordinator because Steve Wilks is leaving for the NFL after just one season. Now, there was reports that Steve Wilks was trying to get the New York Giants defensive coordinator position. He wasn't able to land that job, but he has been hired by the Carolina Panthers, a team that he's got a lot of experience with. He was formerly longtime defensive assistant with the Panthers, going back this time to work for Matt Rule there with the Panthers, and he is going to be the defensive passing game coordinator, secondaries coach for the Panthers this season. And, I know a lot of SEC fans immediately wrote this guy off as, a bust at the college level. And I don't blame you if you did, because Missouri was so poor on defense to start the season. This is something we touched on about a month ago. But if you trailed off and you didn't follow Missouri at the tail end of the season, I mean, it was like a light switched here. They fired the defensive line coach, and the running game was one of the best in the SEC for the final month of the season. So I've read these stats before. I'm going to read them again. To start the season, August and September, Missouri allowed 271 rushing yards per game, dead last in the SEC. I mean, that's just pitiful. And then it got even worse in October once they got into SEC play. 296 rushing yards allowed per game. Again, dead last in the SEC. And at that point, you're wondering, my God, is Steve Wilks going to get fired before his first season? And this is when they fired the defensive line coach. And, you're thinking, well, this could be one and done, which, in fact, it was one and done. But in November, 120 rushing yards allowed by the Missouri Tigers, fourth best in the SEC. And I know what you're thinking. You're saying, well, hell, they probably had a light schedule. No, and that was their toughest stretch, only month that featured all SEC opponents, including Georgia. Of course, went on to win the national championship. The Missouri Tigers held the Bulldogs to their lowest rushing total in 2 seasons. They faced South Carolina, which was, hot and cold at the running attack there at the tail end of the season. But, they faced Florida, which running the ball was about all they could do. Arkansas led the SEC in rushing. That was their other November opponent. So, I wouldn't say that losing Steve Wilks is good by any means. They do have Blake Baker, who they recently hired off of LSU staff. He's been a defensive coordinator at Miami. So if Drinkwitz wants to keep with an in-house candidate, Blake Baker makes a ton of sense. I don't know if that's going to be the move specifically or not. And I did want to note that Steve Wilks had a clause in his contract. If he were to leave Missouri for the NFL, he doesn't owe Missouri any buyout. And he had a big contract. I think he was making over $1 million at Missouri. So this is a hit, certainly. I think the Steve Wilks system and those players, they grasped what he was trying to get. The tail end of the season could have led to a big season next year. Now, Drinkwitz and company, and credit Drinkwitz here. I'll throw up his message here on the YouTube page. But, he seemed very appreciative of Steve Wilks for coming down to Columbia and coaching up the defense. But that was something that he kind of preached all last off season. And I think it helped him in recruiting, certainly, where these other SEC schools and rivals of Missouri said, well, hell, we can get you to the NFL. That was, that's the pitch everybody makes in recruiting. But with Steve Wilks, we said, hey, we got a guy here that's been in the NFL, lived it, breathed it. He's going to teach you what you need to know a hell of a lot better than these other coaches that have no NFL experience. And certainly that pitch had to work because we had the best recruiting class in Missouri history here. So, that's something where, I'm not sitting here saying losing Steve Wilks, Eli Drinkwitz is not going to be able to recruit anymore, because considering, his ties to the NFL, he probably wasn't, and this is just a guess on my part, but I would say he's probably not the best recruiter in the world just because he hadn't been doing it for so long. So maybe, hell, Missouri may even get better when it comes to recruiting aspect, but unless they hire another former NFL head coach former NFL defensive coordinator. They're probably going to lose that pitch on the recruiting trail. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see who Eli Drinkwitz hires to be his defensive coordinator. That'll be a story to watch with spring camp just a month or so away in Columbia.